Hello and welcome to our next course part about the so-called logical formulas. Mostly the if and the if-s formula. So the formula is used when you want to have a logical comparison between values and then want to have an output depending on the result of this comparison. So the formula needs a test and a value you want to have as an output if this test is true. And you have also the optional argument of handing out a value if this test is false. So for example, here and down you see two examples. If A2 is larger than B2, then their output budget exceeded will be handed out as a result, and otherwise OK will be handed out as a result. And you can also have like other calculations or references to other cells as an output. And you need to pay attention to this now and in general. For comparison and return matrices, they must always be the same size. For example, you have here a matrix 5 rows and here a matrix 4 rows. And if you want to compare them, you can't compare 5 to nothing. And therefore, you will have an error there. And you risk errors if your matrices or arrays aren't the same size. And also in the advanced field and expert field, Excel will not calculate some functions, some formulas at a certain point in time. So pay attention to this. There's also the IFS function. The IFS function test is also a test function and outputs then the value if the first condition is true. So you have multiple tests, and if the first test in line who is true gets the point and therefore outputs the result or the value you predetermine. So for example, here you test first, is this condition true? Then you hand out this. If it's false, then you test if this condition is true and you hand out this, otherwise this, and so on and so on. So you test for multiple, you can test there for multiple conditions. You could also nest an if function to do that. So for example, here you test if this is true. If it's true, then you hand out this. Otherwise, you jump into the second if function or multiple if functions, you can nest it as you wish, in the second if function and test this condition. If this is true, then you hand out, if this is true, then you hand out this value, otherwise you hand out this value. So, but if you have nested if function, it may make sense to use the ifs function, which is a little bit clearer. This is, for example, the same as the function above here, but with an if-s function. So first check this, then this value will be handed out if this is true. Otherwise, you check this, then this, then this, and so on and so on. So you have, and you see here there's a run written, because here the if function, here this is like the if value, and this is the so-called else value. And with the ifs function, you can also do that if you write down a true and or one there, and then this will be the else value then here. So this is also a fallback output value or the else value. And this is a beautiful picture of what nested if statements could look like. And you see people make jokes about it. So you know about the if-s function yet, and you may be able to use it in your future and not do an like very complicated if nested if function. There's also the if error function. This will output a value when an error occurs, so it's type of some type of error handling. For example, here, if b2 is 0, you can't divide by 0. So you will have an error here, and if you don't have this if error function around it, then it will show an error. But with this if error function, you can hand out a error a value if something is an error. For example, here this is calculation error. So let's see how this looks in Excel. So for example, if this value, oh sorry, I need to open the bracket. If this value is larger than this value, then we will hand out alpha, otherwise we will hand out beta. And you see 2000 is larger than 500, so beta will be handed out. I could also turn this and you see alpha is handed out. So with the IFS function, we test if this is larger than this, then we will hand out beta. And if this is smaller than this, we will hand out alpha. And you see alpha is handed out because it's smaller than 2400. And with the if error function, if this is an error, then we will hand out error. And you see error, if we have something like this, it will show the value. So there are also, because you need to know in this if functions, the if function here, or the IFS function also, in this logical test, the output or the underlying value is in this logical test function if something is true or false. And therefore, you could also use, I've learned this in school, the logical functions, let's call it that way. And there is the so-called AND or XOR function in Excel, also the NOT function, and you could also mix those functions. And therefore, you can check in an if function not only if one value is true, you could also check, for example, if two or more values are true at the same time. So, for example, with the AND function, you can hand out them multiple tests, and if all those tests are true, then the AND function will hand out the value true. Otherwise, the value that will be handed out is false. So it's a so-called logical AND, and it's also doable with more than two logical arguments. The OR function. For the OR function, there needs to be at least one value true. So if everything is false, the function will hand out false. Otherwise, the function will hand out true. And it's doable for more than two values as well. The XOR function only hands out true if only one value is true. So if both values or three or four values are false, it will hand out false. Also, if every value is true, it will only hand out true if only one value is true. And the NOT function reverses the value of a logical result. So true gets false and false gets true. And also, you could combinate those values. That's the main point. For example, here an if and an AND function. So here we have three arguments here, and every of those tests here needs to be true in order to hand out the true value. Otherwise, the false value will be the result. The same with OR. You can also combine, for example, if and if error, and so on and so on. You can nest it as you wish. Yeah, we can show it here. So we open the if function, then we input an AND. If this is larger than this and this is not better, close brackets, then it's one, otherwise it's two. And it's two because this is smaller than this and this is not better, but you need to know with the AND function, everything needs to be true. We can take a look at what the OR function would output. So this is true. this is false, this is true, and as you know, the OR function only needs to have one value who should be true, who needs to be true in order to be true. So this will hand out a 1. And you see, it's true. You could also have like, yeah, no, I won't do this example here, but as you saw here, you can nest it and combine it as you wish. And therefore, we will have our next exercise. I will link the spreadsheet to this and the link to the exercise in the video description. Feel free to do this exercise. The next video will be a solution for this exercise. Thank you for your attention. See you next time.